hear too often from leaders who just accept high turnover as a norm. And I will argue until I'm exhausted that this is unacceptable. All turnover is expensive, and we need to eliminate it as owners and as business leaders. Well, our guest today has every reason to have this excuse of high turnover, as she's in a tough industry, but yet she maintains a less than 5% employee turnover and has even grown her staff by 25% over the last year. Karen Norheim is the president and CEO of American Crane and Equipment Corp. The work can be dirty, is dangerous, is backbreaking, and yet their turnover is almost nothing. We're going to find out how she's done it today. Karen Norheim, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thank you, Kendra, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too. This is so exciting to talk with you in an industry that, I mean, my gosh, we've done some work in this industry, and hearing what you have done, I mean, it is remarkable. And so, because this is such a tough industry that you're in, I mean, tell us the backstory of how did you come to become the CEO and president?
Sure. So yes, we're a manufacturer of overhead cranes and hoists. We just celebrated our 50th year last year. So I guess we're 51 now this year. And so my involvement with American Crane, I was very different. So my father was actually one of the founders of the company, and he asked me to come and work for him some 20 odd plus years ago. And I was very reluctant. And I was like, what are these things called cranes and hoists? How fun can this be? And it's very begrudging, but he convinced me, and I said, okay, I'll come and I'll check this out. How great can manufacturing be? And it turns out it's amazing. I found my life's passion working in manufacturing, working with engineers and everything that we do. Had the wonderful opportunity to work with my father for many, many years. And over the course of that, he taught me a lot of the lessons that helped us to maintain, like you had a great intro about how we were able to maintain this low employee turnover. And, his whole philosophy on this revolves around the idea of being a great place to work, which I think is what you really are talking about when
Yes.
we speak about how do we overcome this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, being a great place to work is sometimes one of the most overlooked things that we can do as leaders to create profitability in our companies. So many people kind of, I think, poo-poo the idea of having a great culture and not realizing that it impacts your bottom line.
Yep. What's interesting about my dad is he didn't necessarily, he just kind of intuitively knew this thing about culture, and we didn't have a lot of things written down previously. He, sort of did these things intrinsically, and he would teach me different pieces. And he always said the most important part of our business is our people. You need to make it a great place for them to work, and then you let your awesome people be awesome. Sort of mantras like this that were just, I think, ahead of their time and what he was doing. And then, my coming in, I've been CEO since 2021, I think it is. And then I effectively running the company since 2019 as COO and president, as my father stepped back. And my whole spin was to actually make sure we took the great culture that we had, that what wasn't written down, and take the pieces and solidify it so that it was intentional and we didn't lose it when something happened to my father, when he was gone. And we actually did lose him in 2021. So, all of the work since 2018, I would say, was when my second generation stamp came, where I was really trying to lock in what is the culture, what is the founder's legacy, what do we believe in, and have it in such a way that we're intentionally building upon it and building all these pieces, because it is a never ending journey to keep a great culture. I like to call it gardening. It just never ends, right? The cycle continues.
Yeah, no, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about how you've done some of that, because I think it is really I mean, there's a couple of things about what is, studying your culture that I thought was really interesting. One was the fact that you have spanned two generations now, and that can be really challenging in any business, even if it's not a family run business like in your case. But anytime there's a new CEO that comes in, oftentimes culture is implodes. It doesn't is not maintained from the original leader, and I love that you've done that. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. But then the second piece I also think is really interesting is that your dad did have this intuition around it, and now you've really more formalized it. And I kind of want to talk about that journey too, and like what have you noticed about it? So let's kind of start with the first one, just the transferring of between generations. Like what did you notice when you took over in 2018 or started to become more on the executive team in 2018?
Yeah, so my whole I had I'm a big seeker of knowledge. I think our job as leaders of a company is to develop ourselves, right? Not just develop our people. We have to develop our people, we have to develop ourselves, which means we have to be staying up and up on trends and knowing what's going on. And so I've always been on this journey of sort of looking ahead and seeing what's on the horizon and seeking knowledge and how to integrate it. And in that point in time for me, I had come across culture and formally was thinking about it. And I also at that time had joined a Vistage group, which I know we talked about. And I started to see some of my peers who were really successful in what they were doing. And I just realized that this culture piece, we were doing good, but if we didn't lock it in and it came to me taking over the company, we had a real chance of losing it. So that kind of fear a little bit of how do I keep this founder's legacy that my dad created really drove me to that and kind of seeing that. So the way that started was taking a look at our core values, which really are behaviors. There's a great book by Dave Friedman out there. Now I'm blanking on the name of it. Culture by Design. And it's a great one that we use to kind of step our way through thinking about what are the behaviors that mean success? Like why are we successful? Why do we have a great culture? And we dug in and we came up with those. We also stumbled across the word grit, and that really stuck with me. That really speaks to who I am, who my dad is, who our company is. We do very specialized manufacturing. We have equipment that's actually with NASA to lift spacecraft. We do a lot of work in nuclear power plants, lifting, very critical lifts, highly engineered products. And we have a lot of roadblocks that come in the course of doing our work because it's tough work. And so, but we always find a way to overcome the obstacles, find a way around. We don't give up, we keep going. So came across the word grit. That kind of became that mantra for us: grit, perseverance, heart, and integrity. And we just, use that to keep kind of creating this idea and putting the words around it. I do think it's very important to have the words that you use as sort of the focus. And then the next phase of that was starting to teach people what those words meant. And now kind of taking what my father was saying versus these words that we're doing and marrying them together. So people teaching. I think culture, honestly, is a lot about teaching. You're teaching people. And you're also, I like to call myself chief reminding officer. My job is just to keep reminding people what's important in our culture. What are the key stories that we tell about how we do our business and why we do our business, and just repeating them and repeating them. So in the beginning, it started out with kind of identifying those behaviors, and putting to words who we are. And then we did, some launch events and then we just kept telling the story being a story to over and over again. This is who we are. This is why grit matters. This is why we do things. And we started to embed it into the everyday fabric of what we do. We talk about it. We have meetings about it. And then, that evolved for a couple of years. And then we kind of, built upon it a little bit further. Now we started doing videos, and we have Friday newsletters, and, people start, and I'm, saying the words all the time, and our leaders are saying the words. So we've created ambassadors. So again, really continually telling the story of who we are, why we do what we do, and what is the culture? Why does it matter? Just honestly, to the point of, I feel like you're saying it over and over again, but it is that important. So I guess those are sort of the key pieces that have led us maybe to where we are today. And it was a struggle. I mean, when I first, I was like, everybody's going to think I'm nuts when I start talking about this. And the leadership team, there is a lot of formality that I did bring. Formalizing us does really resonate with me when you said that. Because we, would have leadership team meetings and we had a strategic plan, but a lot of that was up in my father's head and it wasn't written down. And so sort of taking that and translating it and realizing that people can't read your mind. You really have to tell them what's going on.
And I love that you tie it back into the behaviors too, because I think a lot of companies, and we've talked a lot about this on this podcast actually, is how important the values are. But I think a lot of leaders sometimes think about it more like what looks beautiful on the wall or what might sound great to a customer instead of it being the behaviors you really want from your employees. So when you say that, I like to kind of call this out for our listeners because it is, I mean, I know some of you who listen a lot, like you hear me say this a lot, but it is so important to get clear on what those behaviors are. And so now I wonder, how did your dad react to all this at first? I mean, I think a seasoned leader, I'm sure was he cynical? I mean, how did he respond to now you coming in? Here comes my daughter, Karen. And
Well, I've been here now for over 21 years. At the time, I've been here for a while and I've been a part of the leadership team. But yes, we luckily for me, my father and I worked really well together. But yeah, he was kind of like, well, what is this? What are we doing? But he had his own epiphany. So my father was actually an immigrant from Norway. So he came to the US when he was in his 20s. He actually came from nothing. His father, he never knew who his father was. He was born on a small island off the coast of Bergen, Norway. His mother died when he was just 10. He was raised by his grandparents, very isolated island, which didn't even have bridges to it, and I think until the 70s. So anyway, so he did have a great childhood, farming environment. And he comes to the US, gets his education, mechanical engineer, ends up working for a crane company in Norway, comes to North America, and ends up in Douglasville, Pennsylvania, as part of a few Norwegians creating American Crane. So we have a strong family background with Norway, and I'll tie this to the Vikings. So, my father comes back from a trip to Norway. He had gone to see some family, and he says, Karen, this culture thing you're doing, this is it. And he shows me this poster of old Viking laws. And, it's be brave and aggressive in your business, be prepared, keep the camp in order, make sure everyone has meaning in their work, have one chief. Like these are the kind of things that are on this poster. And he's like, well, this is our culture. This is it. These Viking laws, this is what we are. And he was right. It was a really good example of a lot of our key values. And also, Vikings never wrote anything down. So I was like, yes, Dad, this really is like it because we don't write anything down. But yeah, so he got it, and I think he started to understand where I was headed and trusted me to bring some newer ideas to that. He was always great like that. He was an ultimate gardener. He gardened our people. He really was a mentor, always looking for ways to grow people, seeing potential in them that they didn't see in themselves. Really a great teacher. So he was begrudging, but at the same time in a really great fatherly way and open to the ideas. So it did really. It worked out. He embraced me, even if he's like, I'm not sure about this, but he let me have a chance to try. And I think that is important. Anyone in a family business or as you're going to that next generation, he did, I said, Dad, you have to be behind me. You can't, no matter what, you have to, in front of everybody, say you're behind everything I'm doing. I'm like, you can come tell me I'm nuts and you don't like that, or you want to change that behind the scenes, but we do have to be a united front in front of everyone. He got that. So, and that I had the pleasure of his last few years, like I said, 2019 and really on. It started in 2018 where I was taking over leadership. And then by 2019, I think I had the chief operating title and I was effectively running the business for him, but he was still available and still involved in some way. So I was able to run the ship, but still call for backup and support and ask questions. And that actually worked really well for us. And then unfortunately, he passed away very unexpectedly on us, but we did the work and we had done all of the things to make sure our business would succeed from a business, continuity standpoint. And we also made sure we would succeed from a culture standpoint. And, this was after COVID had happened. And honestly, culture helped us through that, and then culture helped us for the loss of our founder, and it turned into a celebration of him, and a continuity, versus some sort of catastrophic, company event. And now we're on to celebrating and honoring him, and kind of continuing that work. And now what I'm really into now is taking that word and documentation to the next level, writing what I'm calling the grit manual, which takes each of our core values, which we do have curriculum around, and how we teach it, and build quality. What does that really mean for us? What are the pieces behind all that? We're going to go deeper and create more stories, and try to tease out our rituals that we have, because there are still things that are not written down, that are just sort of, in that ether of what we do. So again, I'm very much about intentionality, thoughtfulness, and continuing to capture and build upon what it is that we do.
I love all of that. So I'm curious, when you think about then the work that you guys are doing, I mean, I don't know the exact breakdown of all your employees, but I would imagine you've got some people who are doing some pretty tough work. How exactly do you build the meaning into jobs like that?
Yeah, so a part of our group that does, some of the difficult pieces, we have a whole service division that is out on the road, and we do a lot of work during outages. And so they may be, across the country, far away from home for several weeks, depending on what's going on, because when they have some of these plant outages, especially in the nuclear energy industry, we're on call 24/7. We kind of have it staffed. And that team really, they have such a strong culture amongst themselves of getting the job done, maintaining the safety standards, and really being proud of the work that we do, or the work that they do. So we're always, celebrating what jobs are going on, where have they been, what has happened, what's going on with the service group, and the same with our jobs internally. The difficult, when our project managers, we could hit a roadblock with the supply chain. We could hit a roadblock with perhaps like a manufacturing issue. We're building something that's never been built before, or something like that. And we just keep working around it. So, again, I feel like I'm not exactly answering that question. How do we keep that? Yeah. We talk about the purpose of what we do. We celebrate when we have successes, and we're not afraid to talk about when there's a surprise. Like, we have a part of that grit culture idea. There is one concept, which is no surprises. We are very transparent with our customers and with each other. So instead of somebody hits an issue, some companies, maybe they would just, I don't want to admit that something's wrong, or we'd say, no, we got to lean into it. As soon as we know there's going to be an issue, we flag it, we figure it out, we find out what's going on. That happens in the field a lot too, right? There are circumstances, there could be weather. We've had to put cranes up in facilities that are being built in the middle of a snowstorm, so there are things that you have to overcome, and they're challenges. They're going to come up no matter what. You have to be willing to look at it, stay calm, look at the problem, and say, we're going to be able to find a way around this. We're going to solve this issue, and also have a strong enough team that they can lean on each other for different pieces.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think what you said earlier too is probably something that you don't even realize is a big part of this, or maybe you do, but just being that chief repeating officer, right? Where you're also just reminding everyone and having to connect the dots to why the work is meaningful and why what they're doing is so important. Because you're not just fixing a nuclear stack. Like, you're literally fueling possibilities for people. If they do not have electricity, they can't innovate, they can't create. I mean, their job is so important, right?
Yes. Yes. And so we have one day a year. We do events throughout the year, but one particular day where we highlight everything we did throughout the year. And we've been doing that. Probably we've been having the day for longer than 2018, but in 2018, 2019, we really started to make sure we were celebrating and double down. So this grit day, we talk about all of the projects that were shipped, where they went, so that if you work on the manufacturing floor, you know that job number 21022 was for, this customer who makes batteries, and this is where your machine went. And this is, so we tell them what they actually were a part of. And I think that has a lot of meaning. It's one of the favorite things. We produce a video. It's long. It's almost like a little mini movie showing what happens, showing what the customer does. We do a lot of work for the Navy, so we get them really celebrated about helping, the Navy or the armed forces. But it's our job, it's my job as the leader to make sure that we do that and that we talk about these things. We talk about how many customers we serve in a year, how many parts. Our parts group, may have over 1,000 customers in a year. That's a lot. And what happens too is departments here, service gets to hear about them. They get to hear about what's going on in manufacturing, parts it goes all across. And we engage our marketing department. So you were talking earlier about sometimes people are looking for something for their customer and versus the core values that mean or the whatever it is that is for yourself. So we actually looked internal for Grit Matters, and we actually thought it would be more of an internal marketing thing that we were doing and an internal messaging. And what happened was, with the talent wars that are going on, it turned out we had created this great brand that was so good for us inside that we actually started to expand and use in all of our marketing for recruiting and talking about who we are. And our customers love it too, but because it's true to who we actually are. And so it's very authentic. And it really speaks to the values that bring us success. And it just resonates. So our marketing department is tasked with both internal messaging and external messaging. And they do a great job of having fun with it and making us look cool with all these, different things, which is just a small piece of the whole puzzle. But,
No.
Many of our staff are always wearing apparel. We have all kinds of different things that we make available. But that's celebrating. It's all reinforcement. It's all coaching moments, right? It's just constantly reminding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look, again, doing the research for today, I was really impressed by all that, what I could see. I mean, I can only imagine what's happening internally. It's really neat though. So, and I think again, it comes back around to connecting the dots for people. And it just makes it so that the culture is stickier and people want to stay, which is why, again, you don't have the turnover rate that your industry is, kind of famous for. I mean, one of our potential clients is in more in the crane rental industry. So slightly different, I think, than because
Yes.
but still, I mean, their turnover rate is 64%.
Oof. Can you imagine? I mean, the cost, the exhaustion, it's, something that we've added to, which is me growing. So I've been developing. 2018 was a while ago. We're now into 2024. I can't believe it. Over the last several years, I started executive coaching, getting involved with Vistage, and I learned how important it was for me and how my growth is. So then I started putting key leaders into Vistage with me and other people into coaching opportunities. And now I've decided that we have to double down. We need training for the whole company on, how to be high performing teams and how to elevate. So I'm leaning into training, which traditionally, is non-productive labor, do we need this training about, but we need to have these moments. We're talking and we're upskilling people. We're giving them skills to be better at their job and working better together. And then we're also, again, infusing the stories about the culture, and that helps people to see themselves as more. I mean, isn't that our job as leaders to help people see themselves as more than they are, where they're going, right? That is like the beauty and the joy of growing people, is you can see them get that. So yeah, the great logo and the fun videos that we do and pull together, it all, we are that cool. We just managed to create a visual that helps to project to our people to say, hey, yeah, like this is pretty awesome what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And just a little side thing there. Because of the work that we do, or I'm, just consume all the different reports and everything that's coming out. And I'll let you know that over the last year, the number one reason why someone left a job, or the top two reasons, is fluctuating back and forth, are career development opportunities. And so you leaning into training is going to actually even be even that much better, because that is the thing that people feel like they're lacking the most in most organizations right now, is just a career path or just growth opportunities. And when you get into the psychology behind it, it makes a lot of sense, because people who are not growing feel afraid. They feel like they're not relevant anymore. They're going to get laid off. They're not going to get a job. They don't necessarily say that out loud unless you really dig in with them. But with AI and just, offshoring, inshoring, all of the various things that are happening, it creates fear inside of people. But if they're growing and they're learning new things, it settles them down to a point where they're like, yeah, I know that that's going to all work out okay because I'm continuing to grow. So great, huge
I
kudos to you for leaning into that.
Thanks. And I love that concept. I mean, I think that's the part of creating, the environment, the garden, whatever whatever your way you think about your company, is to allow psychological safety. Like you have to make it so that people feel safe enough to challenge. And we haven't always been perfect at this piece of it, being able to challenge ideas and hear someone else's perspective, or get candid feedback from somebody and check, because when we can have constructive conversations, that's when innovation happens, right? When people with different perspectives come together. So, but you can't have that. I love radical candor as a word. There's a bunch of other ways of saying it, but you can't have that without psychological safety. And so, yeah, so it's like, I agree. Like, I love that you're saying that, and leaning into that whole training thing, I think helps to, as you said, helps to add to that whole piece of foundations, to support everybody.
Absolutely. And I think too, in the work you guys are doing, people will die if you don't do it right. This is a high stress, very critical work that you're doing. And if there are mistakes made compared to other industries, like there is a possibility that there's a very large impact. And so that's also an incredible thing that you've created, in that in such a high stress environment with such mission critical work, you've still created an environment where people feel like they can be safe. I just love that. It's remarkable.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And we have fun too. There's a way to do this, to have tough, challenging work. One of my mantras for this past year and going into 2024 is a hashtag make it easy. Our toughest problems should be the ones that we solve for our customers. And what that is saying is, we need to be able to work together. That needs to be easy because our work is hard, right? Like we've got to be able to work together really well because the work that we're doing is difficult and we need to deliver. So I love that statement.
Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to actually end this discussion. So, gosh, Karen, thank you so much for your time and your energy around this topic. And I just can't wait to have our listeners get a chance to experience what you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.